Isaiah, you bring up Frederick Moore. I think you dropped his name a few minutes ago. So you're going to the passing attack. Who are those guys that are going to be in play to hopefully make these plays in the passing game?
I would venture to guess that at least one guy that we'll be talking about in the fall isn't on the roster. I don't have a specific name. I mean, I have one in my head, but and I mentioned Skylar Bell often, who Michigan was highly targeting from UConn. He ended up staying at UConn. It sounded like it was a credit issue. Someone hit me up on Twitter and said, "You're on your podcast saying that he's already on campus." No, I'm not saying that whatsoever. I'm just saying that if he is to enter the portal again, Michigan will target him. If not him, it will be someone else, right? Like I think that they're going to find at least one more guy to help Bryce. But I think that there's a couple guys that I think that will really be stand out. Donovan Moli, the 6'5" receiver, former quarterback at Indiana, right? Like he played against Michigan in 2021 as the starting quarterback for the Hoosiers, which is kind of funny to think he'll be catching passes. But Ron Bellamy yesterday was talking about Soup Campbell returning to the program and put up all these pictures of the guys he coached. Soup Campbell was the wide receivers coach for the entirety of the Lloyd Carr era at Michigan. So that was an era that you always knew Michigan was going to have some top flight receivers, whether it was Ty Streets, David Terrell, Mario Manningham, Braylon Edwards, right? Like, there was all kinds of guys throughout that era that were massive, massive stars, coached by Soup Campbell. So he's putting all these guys up on the wall. And so then he was asked about, who, if there was anyone in your room that could be up on that wall, who would it be? And he, without hesitation, said Donovan Moli, and I think he's on track to be there. I think that's a really good sign. I think that we'll see, right? Because they do have other guys. We've heard a lot of good things about the fellow 6'5" guy. He's a freshman, though. It's Jamar Browder. I think what makes that much more impressive is, I think there was some hesitation about him a little bit as a recruit, right? Coming out of Santa Lucia's community in Florida, 3-star, was previously committed to NC State. It seemed like there was some question about if he was a culture fit for Michigan, because keep in mind, Michigan is very much all about having this particular culture of player, and they're certainly not going to be the 80s 90s Miami Hurricanes, but they're not necessarily going to be the most pious guys either. But it kind of reminds me of after he left the program, Pep Hamilton. I remember talking to him at a football camp, and he was telling me, like, Michigan doesn't really have a culture, right? They don't get guys that need football. And they found a way to strike a balance between the academic guy and the guy who needs football. And Jamar Browder they were a little bit, I think, a little concerned when he was a recruit about him being that type of guy, but he came on campus and immediately acclimated. And then it took all of one practice when defensive players were raving about him and saying, like, he was the star of the show yesterday in our first practice. And it's continued. Fred Moore continues to get accolades as well. Like you just mentioned him. It's really interesting to think about what he can bring to the table, because he could be that typical kind of like Jason Avant type of guy, right? Like he's not the tallest guy in the world. You don't necessarily think of him as a deep threat. I think the problem was last year that he was the guy that they were like, he's our deep threat, but he's 6'1", right? He's my height. And usually you don't think of a 6'1" guy as being a deep threat. You think of him maybe being that Z receiver. Maybe you put him in the slot, depending on who else you have. And I just don't think it worked out that way. And also because the quarterback and offensive line issues, but I just don't think it worked out that way. And now he's got all kinds of confidence because of what he was able to do against Alabama. It wasn't like a huge performance. I think it was 3 catches for 34 yards, his first career touchdown. But he's got speed, and he's got an ability to make, yards after the catch. And that's the type of thing that they used to get from Roman Wilson, right? Like, you can have those tall guys. The tall guys are probably going to be more catch and come down with it, but you need guys like Fred Moore who can do that Ronnie Bell style or the Roman Wilson style to be able to get the ball in your hands and then make a play. And I think he's going to be in that class as well. And then freshman Andrew Marsh is kind of as advertised as well. Another 6'1" guy, kind of the same mold, maybe a little faster than Fred Moore, 4-star out of Texas. And certainly I think that he could be a big factor too. Then I just wonder about some of the other guys, like Peyton O'Leary, who had some big plays against Ohio State last year, or Kendrick Bell, Ronnie Bell's younger brother, who's a 6'4" guy or 6'3", could potentially be a guy. I mean, they're going to spread out a lot of guys, right? They're saying the room is so deep that it's creating competition. The problem is just aside from Donovan Moli and the incoming Anthony Simpson, who isn't here for spring yet. He's from UMass, who had an 800-yard season 2 years ago. They don't really have anybody that you can point your finger at and say, that's a guy that's got a lot of production. He's about to take that next step forward. They feel confident about who they have. But I'm still a little curious because McCauley's, the kind of the one that you have your eyes on, has the size and everything, but outside of him and Anthony Simpson, there's just little production. So it's a position group that I'm terribly curious about.